We begin with this. A ruling in a landmark legal case over the opioid crisis could lead to one of the biggest monetary awards in U.S. history. A judge in Oklahoma will decide later today if Johnson & Johnson bears responsibility for helping to fuel the state's opioid epidemic by aggressively marketing painkillers. Oklahoma is asking for $17.2 billion. Now, this could set a precedent for cases around the country. Omar Villafranca is outside the courthouse in Norman, Oklahoma, with more on the story. But, Omar, start us with this. What's at stake for the drug industry here?
A lot, especially since there's cases in other states as well. But this is the first time a case like this has gone to trial, but obviously it will not be the last. And depending on how a judge rules, it could provide a new strategy for attorneys on how to hold big corporations accountable.
Don't buy that this was a good company. In the context of this case, it is not a good company.
For weeks, the state of Oklahoma has argued that Johnson & Johnson and its pharmaceutical subsidiary Janssen helped create a public nuisance by intensely marketing opioid painkillers while downplaying the risk of addiction. We spoke with the state's legal team.
This is very personal to all of us. My partner lost a niece to this opioid epidemic. I lost my firstborn son to the opioid epidemic.
The 2017 filing named multiple defendants. Purdue Pharma and Teva Pharmaceuticals settled out of court for a combined total of $355 million without admission of wrongdoing. But Johnson & Johnson and its subsidiary Janssen decided to go to trial. Sabrina Strong is their attorney.
When you're right, you fight. And that's what you're seeing here. We have sympathy for those who suffer from substance abuse. But Janssen did not cause the opioid crisis in this country.
Johnson & Johnson says its opioid products account for less than 1% of the Oklahoma market, but the state disputes that.
They made money whether they sold their drugs or when somebody else sold opioids, because they were supplying everybody else. And this 1% thing, that's a complete canard.
If the judge rules against Johnson & Johnson, the public nuisance argument that was previously used successfully to fight big tobacco could possibly be used in opioid lawsuits set to go to trial in Ohio this fall.
Thousands of people being addicted to prescription opioids, thousands of people dying. You've got a public nuisance. You've got harm that's occurring.
Both sides here in Oklahoma say they will appeal if the judge rules against them. Now, not only are there cases that were filed in Ohio, there was also new suits filed last week in West Virginia against Johnson & Johnson and also Teva Pharmaceuticals for misrepresenting the risks of their opioid products. Tony?
All right, Omar, thank you. A lot at stake here, billions of dollars, but also millions of lives, people looking for justice.